So hey everyone, today in this video lecture we will be discussing about the peritoneum, which is a serous lining present in the abdominal cavity, right? So we will be discussing what is peritoneum, what are the various functions of the peritoneum, and how the peritoneum lining is present in the abdominal cavity. We will be discussing in this video lecture. So stay tuned. So primarily, what is the peritoneum? So it is a serous membrane which lines the abdominal walls and is reflected over the viscera. So for understanding purpose, let me show you that consider this as an animal. Okay, we had dissected that particular animal from the midline. We had dissected that animal, and now we have seen a cross-section view of the abdominal cavity. So what you can see is the abdominal cavity over here, and it is a cross-section view of that particular abdominal cavity, right? Now, we all know that in the abdominal cavity there are abdominal organs. Say O1, O2, and O3 will be the organs that are present in the abdominal cavity. Okay. Now, what we are saying is that we all know that we had an abdominal cavity in our body, right? So that abdominal cavity contains certain organs, right? Say their name are O1, O2, and O3. Okay. Now O1, O2, and O3 are surrounded by a certain membrane. Okay. A serous membrane. Okay. What I am marking is a serous membrane, right? What I am encircling is a serous membrane, which is enclosing three organs, which are, oh, I'm not saying that the abdominal cavity contain only three organs, but for an explanation, I am saying that there are three organs. Consider them as O1, O2, and O3. Okay. Now, those three organs are enclosed by a serous membrane, which is known as what? Your peritoneum. Okay. Now, what we further see is that peritoneum is further can be divided into two parts. What are they? The first part is the peritoneum layer, which is facing the abdominal wall. What is this? This is what? Abdominal wall, right? This is the abdominal wall, right? Now the layer of the peritoneum, which is, wait a second, let me change the color of the pen. So the layer, this is the layer, right? So the layer that is facing towards the abdominal wall, what it is? It is the parietal peritoneum. Okay. And the layer which is facing inwards towards the viscera or the organs are known as what? Your second part, which is the visceral peritoneum, right? Now the one which is facing towards the abdominal wall, it is parietal peritoneum, and the one which is facing towards the organ or the viscera is known as the visceral peritoneum. Okay, I hope this part is clear, right? This stuff is clear. What we had seen is, for the explanatory purposes, what I had say to you that we had cutted or dissected an animal, okay, and we had seen a cross-section view of the abdominal cavity. And for an example, I had told you that there are three organs present in that abdominal cavity. What are they? They are O1, O2, and O3. Okay. Now, these three organs are surrounded by a certain serous membrane. Okay. Inside the abdominal cavity, the organs are not directly in contact with the abdominal wall. Okay, they are lined with a serous membrane, and that serous membrane further have two parts. What are they? They are parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum. So the peritoneal layer, which is directly in contact with the organ. So the layer which is directly in contact with the organs, what are they? That are visceral peritoneum. Okay, and the layer of the peritoneum which are in contact with the abdominal wall, what it is? It is the parietal. Okay, I hope these stuff are clear to you, that there are two parts. What are the parietal and the visceral? The parietal is facing the abdominal wall and the visceral is facing the visceras. Okay, visceras are the organs. Now this peritoneum, okay, this peritoneum forms a closed sac, okay, in the case of male animals, while in the case of the female animals, it, what it do, it communicate to the fallopian tubes with an open end. Okay, in the case of the male, it is a closed sac. The peritoneum is in the form of a closed sac, while in the case of the female, it communicates to the fallopian tube. Okay. Now, there is a mesothelial layer. Okay. What it do? It secretes some serous fluid for the free movement of the viscera. We all know the viscera are not tightly enclosed in the abdominal cavity. They are not tightly enclosed. They can move slight here and there in the abdominal cavity. They are tightly packed. I'm not saying that they are completely immobile, but they can move slightly in the abdominal cavity. So how this is possible? This is possible due to the secretion of the serous fluid by the mesothelial layer. Okay, so there is a mesothelial layer which say, wait a second, let me clear this stuff. So there is a mesothelial layer. Okay, this is the mesothelial layer. Okay, now this mesothelial layer secretes some fluid. Okay, and what is the purpose of this fluid? To allow free movement of organs that are there in the abdominal cavity, right? Okay, this part is clear that there is also a mesothelial layer which secretes some fluid for the free movement of the organs. Now, what are the composition of this fluid? So, this fluid composed of water, electrolytes, protein, mesothelial cells, macrophages, and fibroblasts and the lymphocytes. Okay, there are phagocytic cells. Okay, there are electrolytes, and there is water present in the fluid. Okay, that is secreted by what? The mesothelial layer. I hope this slide is clear to you all. Now, coming on to the space between the parietal and the visceral is known as the peritoneal cavity. For an explanatory purpose, let me show you. Consider, wait a second, let me move to, yeah, here I can explain. Consider this is a peritoneum. Okay, this is the peritoneum. This is the visceral layer. This is the parietal. Now the space that is present, this space that I'm marking, this space that is present between the two layers is the peritoneal cavity. Okay, I hope this part is clear. That between the two layers there is a peritoneal cavity, right? This stuff is clear that there is a peritoneal cavity also. Now the main cavity of this peritoneal cavity is known as the greater sac, while the diverticulum or a blind sac will lead to the formation of lesser sac from that greater sac only. What this means that the peritoneal cavity contains two sacs. What are they? Lesser sac and the greater sac. The greater sac is the major, okay, is the major, and the lesser sac is the diverticulum of what? The diverticulum of the greater sac. Okay, so this line is clear. The main cavity is the greater sac. Inside that peritoneal cavity, the main cavity is the greater sac. And from the greater sac, there is a diverticulum or a blind sac, which will lead to the formation of the lesser sac. Okay, now the two sacs communicate through each other by the foramen of Winslow. This is an important point that the two sacs that are what I have mentioned, that the greater sac, what are those sacs are just a part of the peritoneal cavity. Okay, so the main cavity of that peritoneal cavity is the greater sac, and the diverticulum or a blind sac from that greater sac is known as the lesser sac. So if this is the greater sac, okay, this is the lesser sac. Okay, so how these two sacs are communicating through each other? So the communication is made through what? The communication is made through foramen of Winslow. Okay, so the two sacs communicate through each other by the foramen of Winslow, right? Now, what are the function? What are the function of this peritoneum? See, I had told you that this peritoneum, what it do? It encloses, right? It encloses all the organ. It encloses. But we also know that organs need to receive some nutrients also. So how they are going to receive the nutrients? They are receiving the nutrients through the vessels, right? Blood vessels. Now, this particular peritoneal layer also helps to transmit the blood vessels and the nerves to what? To the organ, right? Now, the fold of the peritoneum around the wall of the intestine and attached to the intestine to the dorsal wall of the abdomen is known as mesentery. So, for a clear purpose, consider this to be an intestine. Okay, this is, wait a second, this is the wall of the intestine, right? This is the wall of the intestine. Now, what is this? This is the dorsal wall of abdominal cavity, right? So this intestine, it is attached to the dorsal abdominal wall through a fold, okay? And that fold is known as, this fold that is connecting the two is the mesentery, right? How the lines here? The fold which is around the wall of the intestine, okay? Mark the word, wall of the intestine, and attached to the intestine to the dorsal wall of the abdomen, okay, is known as the mesentery, right? So similarly, there is also a fold of the peritoneum which is attached to the stomach, okay, which is attached to the stomach is known as the omentum. So there are two parts of the omentum, the greater omentum and the lesser omentum, right? So the fold that connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the dorsal wall of the abdomen is known as the greater omentum, while the fold that connects the lesser curvature of the abdomen of the stomach, sorry, the lesser curvature of the stomach to the liver is known as the lesser omentum. For the explanation, let me see. Okay, so consider this to be the abdominal wall, right? This is the your stomach. Okay, here's the liver. This is the liver. This is the stomach, right? So, what is the omentum? You all know it is in all the peritoneal lining also, a fold of peritoneum. So, this is the greater curvature. This whole is the greater curvature of the what? Stomach. So, the fold that connects the abdominal wall to the greater curvature of the stomach, this fold, this fold, that what, this is the abdominal wall, right? Abdominal wall. Okay, so the fold that is connecting the greater curvature, this is the greater curvature of stomach, right? So the fold that is connecting the greater curvature, okay, what is that fold? Is the greater omentum. While there is also a lesser curvature of the stomach. So this lesser curvature, okay, this lesser curvature over here is in the contact, is in the contact with the what? Liver through what? A fold of omentum, which is known as the lesser omentum. I hope this is clear. So the fold that is connecting the lesser curvature of the stomach with the liver is the lesser omentum, and the fold which is connecting the greater curvature, okay, which is connecting the greater curvature through the abdominal wall is known as the greater omentum, right? I hope this stuff is clear. What I have told that the fold of the peritoneum, which is connecting or attached to the stomach, is known as the omentum, right? Now that omentum is having the further two parts, which are what? Greater and the lesser omentum. So the fold which connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the dorsal wall of the abdomen is known as the greater omentum, while the fold that connects the lesser curvature of the stomach to the liver, mind the word that it is attaching to what? To the liver. Okay, lesser curvature of stomach is attached to what? Liver is known as the lesser omentum. Okay, done. So what the content of the lesser omentum are? These are hepatic artery, portal vein, bile duct, hepatic plexus. Obviously, in my previous video in the liver, I had also mentioned you that there is a porta hepatis, right? And that porta hepatis is also in contact with the stomach, right? So what's the lesser omentum contain? It contains the hepatic artery, portal vein, bile duct, hepatic plexus of the nerves, and the lymph nodes and the lymphatic vessels. Correct? I hope this slide is clear. First of all, we had discussed about the peritoneal cavity. Then we had separated it into the two sacs, the greater and the lesser sac, right? And the two sacs communicates through what? Foramen of Winslow, right? And what the function is transmission of the vessels and nerves to the organ. Okay. And later on, we had seen that there is a fold that connects the wall of the intestine to the dorsal wall of the abdomen, which is known as the mesentery. Similarly, there is also a fold of the peritoneum around the stomach, which is known as the omentum, having further two parts, the greater and the lesser. The greater connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the dorsal wall of the abdomen, and the lesser curvature of the stomach is attached to the liver through a fold, which is known as the lesser omentum. That lesser omentum contain what? Hepatic artery, portal vein, bile duct, etc. Right? So now we are moving to the further slides. So I can clearly show you that there is a greater omentum. You can see this is the greater omentum, right? Greater omentum. You can clearly see in this picture, right? And you can also see the lesser omentum over here. This is the lesser omentum, which is connecting the lesser curvature of the stomach. This is the greater omentum having a large curvature. Okay, this is the lesser omentum consists of a lesser curvature, right? So the lesser curvature is attached to the liver. Okay, you can see this is the liver, this is the lesser curvature, and this is the fold. Wait a second. This is the lesser curvature, this is the liver, and this fold, which is the lesser omentum, is connecting the two. Okay, I hope this part is also clear. You can hear also, you can see the greater omentum. Okay, this is how the greater omentum looks like in a cross section. Okay, not in the cross section, in the post-mortem you can clearly see. In your next year, in the second year, you will be performing several post-mortems, and in those post-mortem you can clearly observe the greater omentum and all the stuff, all the organs in a better way. So now coming on to the stuffs here also. So wait a second, let me clear the slide first, because here also I have to explain you furthermore. Now, coming on to the ligaments. Not the ligaments that we study in the case of the joint and all. It is not that. So, what are ligaments? In the case of the peritoneum, these are the fold which passes in between the viscera and connected with the abdominal wall. So, what we know is that if this is the organ 1, say O1, and the O2, and this is the abdominal wall that I had made over above them. Okay, this is what? This is the abdominal wall. Now there is also a fold. Okay, there is also a fold that passes in between the two organs. Okay, so what is this? Ligaments are the fold which passes in between the viscera. These are the two viscera, and a fold that is passing to between the viscera and connected to the abdominal wall over here. Okay, you can see that a fold is connected to the abdominal wall. This is known as the ligament. Don't confuse it with that particular ligament that you study in the case of joints. Okay, that is not that particular ligament. It is the ligament formed by the peritoneal fold. Okay, so what's the function of that ligament? It separates the two viscera, or it is present in between the viscera and attached to the abdominal wall. Okay, now the pelvic peritoneum is the continuation of the abdominal peritoneum. Okay, so the peritoneal cavity. Okay, sorry. So in the abdominal cavity there is the abdominal peritoneum, and the extension of that peritoneum which is present in the abdominal cavity. Okay, and when it extends to the pelvic cavity, it is known as the pelvic peritoneum. That's what the line signify over here. Okay, I hope this is stuff is clear. Okay, it lines the pelvic cavity and reflects onto the viscera that are present in the pelvic cavity. Right now, there is also a fold which connects the rectum. Okay, a fold that connects with the rectum to the roof of the pelvic cavity is the mesorectum. Similar, all the stuffs are similar. Okay, so this is the rectum. This is the abdominal wall. So the fold that is connecting the two is known as the mesorectum. That's what the line signifies. So the fold which connects the rectum to the roof of the pelvic cavity is the mesorectum. Okay. In between the bladder and the rectum, there is a transverse fold of the peritoneum which is attached to the lateral wall of the pelvic cavity is known as the genital fold. This is a part that you must I have to explain that consider this is the rectum. Okay, this is the bladder, and you all know that this is the lateral boundary of the abdominal cavity. Okay, these are the lateral boundaries. This is the dorsal part of the abdominal cavity. Okay, dorsal and the lateral parts. Okay, now there is a fold. There is a fold. This fold. This fold of the peritoneum that is transverse. Okay, firstly, it is a transverse present in between the rectum and the bladder and connecting to the lateral wall. Okay, so what is this? It is the in between the bladder and the rectum. There is a transverse fold of the peritoneum. This is the transverse fold of the peritoneum that I had marked with a blue pen. Okay, it is a transverse fold of the peritoneum which is attached to the lateral wall of the pelvic cavity. So this is the pelvic cavity. Okay, you all know this is the pelvic cavity. Pelvic cavity, right? So these are the lateral walls of the pelvic cavity. So the ligamental fold, oh sorry, the peritoneal fold that is connecting, that is transversing the two, the rectum and the bladder, okay, is known as the genital fold. Okay, in male, this ligament encloses the vas deferens, okay, and in the female, this transverse fold which encloses the uterus and the fallopian tube is known as the broad ligament. A point to notice. Okay, so this transverse fold also encloses the uterus and the fallopian tubes is known as the broad ligament in case of the female. Okay, and the bladder is connecting with the floor of the pelvic cavity by the middle ligament of the bladder. So this is the bladder. This is attached to the what? The floor of the pelvic cavity. This is the floor. Okay, this is the floor, right? This is the floor, and the fold of the peritoneum that is connecting is the middle ligament. Okay, I hope these slides are clear to you all. Now coming on to the function of the peritoneum. What are the function of the peritoneum is? So first of all, it provides a slippery surface. Okay, it has some phagocytic action. I had told you earlier it contains lymphocytic cells, macrophages, all. Okay, I had told you that the macrophages are present in that fluid I had told you, which is secreted by the mesothelial layer, correct? It is a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, it helps in healing. Okay, and it also stores fat. Okay, it also prevents some impaction if there is an impact with a solid thing. So it also prevents some impact that present on the organs present in the abdominal cavity. It also prevents the impact of some solid thing that consider this as an animal. It has been hit, haven't hit by a certain solid thing. It also prevents the organ from damage, right? So this is all about the peritoneum layer, and in later upcoming videos we will be discussing about the stomach and all, okay, of different veterinary species. So with this, thank you everyone. And if you had any queries, you can mention them that down below in the comment section. Okay. So thank you everyone. Very much thank you. Bye.